Welcome, everybody. We are, please do start eating, without a doubt. We are so excited to have so many familiar faces and new faces and to have Tampa Prep community come out and support this incredible night for the Building Bold campaign. Absolutely elated to see everyone. I do have to call one person out at the very, very beginning because I just saw him, and we're here to celebrate an incredible, transformative opportunity for our institution, but I'd be remiss if I did not thank someone that was literally the arrowhead that helped us get across the street, and that's Lyle Blandon. And Lyle, if you would just stand up for a second so people could know who you were. That is a company of greatness moment for me because I'm very appreciative of the boards and the great minds that moved us here to 727 Cash Street, and Lyle was on that team, and I'm so happy to see you here tonight, my friend, so happy. Welcome, everybody. If you've read anything that I've written to our school community, you know that I sort of live with this axiom, the attitude of gratitude, and I wanted to quickly thank our development team of Key and Maggie and Amanda and Julia and Allie and Isabella, who literally worked so hard to make this evening come together in this very, very beautiful spot of the Smith Black Box Theater. If you've seen any productions in here, I bet you never knew that the room could look like this as well. And this is just really, really cool for us to be here. So I wanted to thank the team. Tonight really is an introduction of one of the most important elements of this Building Bold campaign, because it is more than just a building. This is the platform for a very important intersectionality with the medical community. That's just it in a nutshell. This is our most deliberate attempt to make sure that this school is doing everything it can to educate children for their future, not our past. And that's really what the Building Bold campaign is all about. So without further ado, we want to get this evening rolling. I am your moderator, Kevin Plummer. It is very nice to see you tonight. And I'm glad that my wife, Jennifer, is here. This is a date night for us. What do you think? Excellent. So we're having an opportunity to be at least in the same room together, which is going to be awesome. My fellow moderator is Dr. Amanda Hellipwoolley, who is the chair of our science department. And I can tell you, as a colleague, I am fortunate to be graced and blessed by her intelligence, wisdom, and energy around kids every single day. So I couldn't be more happy that she's here. So with that, before I go any further, it is absolutely imperative that we have a full room thank you to one person in the room tonight. This event would not be possible with a transformational, visionary, unbelievably considerate, kind giver, mentor, and friend. I'm going to backtrack with just a quick story. Jen and I came down here in 2007. In 2008-9, it became apparent that the school was going to embark upon a strategic plan. I had never led a strategic plan. The only person I knew that was leading a strategic plan at the time was Dr. Judy Genshaft, president of the University of South Florida. That she took a cold call, and she did take a cold call. And I went up to her office. My office is modeled after her office. She had a table of bulls. I have a table of turtles. And Judy gave me more time than any president of the university should have given a new head of school, and walked me around her campus. And I was like, I want to be her. Because as you walk around USF with Judy, you'll see students be like, hey, President Genshaft. Hey, President Judy. And then every once in a while, risky kid. Hey, Judy. You're like, boy, you got some courage right there, fella. But this project, we would not be where we are today without a critical, transformational lead donation from Dr. Judy Genshaft. And please accept our appreciation tonight. Okay, we're going to do formal introductions of the... Oh, well, I was so into everything that Judy did for me, I forgot that she had 2 sons. So she's a mom as well, and both of her sons went to Tampa Prep, and that really, that took from that first meeting a chance to have all these other events and the wonderful journey with your kids. Truly grateful. With that, so we have 4 gents that have come here tonight to help explain and share the medical profession and what the opportunities are going to be for our students as they leave this wonderful facility after it's completed. And we're going to do formal introductions in a second, but I just wanted to run down the table and have them give some waves for a second so that they're not just sitting here while we start our presentation without you knowing who they are. And one is Dr. Edmundo Robinson. He is up at Moffitt Cancer Center, and we're going to do a formal introduction later. Dr. Neil Goldenberg, Dr. Raj Kotak, and my friend down there, John Kouros, who's the president of Tampa General Hospital, president and CEO. The bios on these guys, man, I feel so unaccomplished. It is like title, letters, and I'm like, I gotta go back to school or something. That's what we got. So with that, we are going to begin our presentation. I turn it over to my fellow moderator, Dr. Helipoli.
Thank you. I'm so excited to see everyone here, see parents of kids I've taught, everyone who cares so much about this school. So without further ado, we've got some video to show you.
For nearly 50 years, Tampa Prep has been the most innovative school in Florida. And now it's time to plan for the next 50. We are building for discovery, creativity, boundary breaking, problem solving, compassion, wonder, and joy. We are building bold. Head of school Kevin Plummer says it best. Our playbook is simple. We envision what's best for our students and then we make it happen. We are forward-looking and forward-thinking, and our campus should advance that mission. Active learning environments were introduced in 2015 throughout the middle and upper school, but the shared science wing has not been updated since 2002 when the current campus was originally built. Adding to and updating the campus will ensure that all spaces reflect the benefits of active learning environments, encouraging openness, collaboration, independent thought, intellectual curiosity, and active, respectful discourse. Maximizing space and facilities will better reflect the talent of our incredible teachers, Tampa Prep's use of contemporary curricula, and the increasingly diverse world in which our students will live and work. This next-level design will support the next generation of inspired thinkers. Some highlights of the Terrapin Tower include 30,000 square feet of state-of-the-art science laboratories with large, flexible classrooms that provide the space needed to conduct labs and team-based projects, facilitating critical thinking, adjoining spaces that are designed to encourage collaboration across disciplines, a reconstructed main entrance with enhanced safety measures, including a single point of entry that will simultaneously be highly secure and welcoming to visitors, 4th floor laboratories that extend to a veranda that can be used for outdoor learning experiences, as well as an impressive and dramatic gathering space. Terrapin Tower allows for a total reimagining of approximately 15,000 square feet of existing space. Renovations include a new lecture hall for outside speakers, grade-level meetings, and other smaller gatherings of both students and parents, a reimagined Mitchell lobby repurposed for students' learning, filled with a variety of quiet nooks and collaborative spaces, similar to the jump seats and study bars that exist in the upper school. 8 additional flexible use classrooms where the science wing currently exists, a student success center that consolidates critical student needs, including academic support as well as social, emotional, and physical wellness. Creating an extraordinary future requires a bold vision, a nimble organization, and the program and physical space to stimulate discovery and innovation. This evolution of Tampa Prep's campus and facilities will be nothing short of transformational. We project that $20 million is needed to make this vision a reality. We can't do it without you.
So Kevin asked me to come today to speak a little bit about our current space and why do we even need this new building? Yes, it's fancy, it's shiny, it's beautiful, but what limitations do we currently have in our space that actually cause us to need this new space? So I thought I'd give you just a quick run through of some of the problems that we face in the current space. Our curriculum, we try to be very innovative, very team-based, active learning, hands-on. And our spaces aren't designed to fit that style of learning. Our spaces are more like this, very traditional, students in lines doing work. If you'll notice, a lot of these students are working together. They're naturally inclined to work on projects with groups if you allow them to do that. But the space isn't really conducive to that style of learning. Instead, the spaces were designed 20 years ago when all of it was lecture focused. So everyone's pointed to the front of the room so the teacher can lecture at them for 50 minutes. And we know from educational research that that's just not the best way to learn. The more hands-on you can be, the more interactive you can be, the more likely it's going to stick. And it builds the critical thinking skills that our students are going to need for the future. So the classrooms hinder group work in a number of different ways. But the kids are doing it anyway. So if you look at this group right here, they're working together to do a virtual lab on genetic linkage in fruit flies. And they're talking to me, they're talking to each other. They're still making it work, but it could be better. Our spaces also suffer from this design aspect when everything was rigidly defined. The front half of the classroom is for lecture, and you line up and you take notes, very traditional. And then on lab days, you go to the back of the room and you do lab. But that's not how our curriculum works anymore. Our curriculum is very flexible. It's assigning the students a problem to tackle and then giving them the tools to go tackle it. This space was built for a different generation, and now we're going to redesign it to fit for the critical skills that we're trying to put forth for this generation. The linear lab benches in many of our spaces make collaboration difficult, and we know that science is a team sport, and it's not going to help them learn it. But they kind of do it anyway. So this particular lab, our students this is 9th grade, and they're looking at slides from patients with cancer and normal tissues, and they're making some comparisons. Are they going to be the next doctors? I don't know, but at least it's teaching them to think, and that's really the most important thing they're going to walk away from this with. But the linear space doesn't help, so they're pointed towards the wall. They're getting help from a teacher, they're helping each other, but it's not the best design. And then we have some infrastructure problems. So this is my classroom. It's a biology classroom. We don't have any sinks. We don't have any running water. It's a bit of a challenge. It's not that we don't do labs, but it is a bit of a challenge. There are some lucky labs that have sinks. This particular sink, when it overfills, floods Kevin's office.
It's true.
It's happened twice. Yeah, I mean, it depends on. No, it's never been done on purpose. But it's also a bit dated. The design isn't functional for a group of students who are trying to work together on a lab. And honestly, I don't know if the person who designed this sink has ever actually used a sink, but it doesn't work that way, especially if you're trying to fill anything of any size, right? So the equipment could be updated for sure. In addition, just the spaces in general are limited. We just have a limited amount of space available for our students, our teachers, and our equipment. So one of our classrooms it's actually a pretty beautiful space. It's been remodeled recently. It used to be a computer lab. But when you put 20 students in here and they're trying to do physics experiments, it doesn't really work that well. They do it anyway. This is a fantastic lab that Derek has designed for these kids. They're creating bumpers. So the project is to create little bumpers for these tracks, and the cars run down it and hit a force plate, and the goal is to get the lowest force of impact. That's a real world example that anyone who can relate to who's ever driven a car, right? And they're doing this, but part of the problem is they have to break down the lab every day because there's just no room to walk around the room. We also have more teachers than we do classroom spaces. So this presents some logistical problems, some scheduling problems. The bright side is that our two newest teachers have got a beautiful collaboration going. But would they like their own space? Absolutely. There's also just more equipment than storage in general. The labs are packed. And then when you try to get more equipment from the storage spaces, you have to interrupt another teacher's classroom to get to it because all of our storage closets are within classrooms. I don't know who thought that was a good idea, but they've clearly never taught a class before. All right, so what is possible if we build bold? Some of this was in the video, but I just want to double down on some of these things. Classrooms that support active learning, that are flexible, that are forward-thinking, that are innovative, and support the curriculum the way that we want to have it. Laboratory spaces that remove all those limits, running water, sinks, equipment storage, logical placement of our students-centered design. And spaces that make sense in general, so, storage spaces that have doors that open to the hallway, classrooms for all of our teachers, and beautiful collaboration spaces. Building Bold also supports our curriculum in more than just new classrooms. So in the video, they talked about some things, but one thing that is probably my second favorite is this Aspire Amphitheater. So a learning staircase for the gatherings, informal, formal, but I, in my mind, picture it for my Medical Explorers Club. So imagine them sitting on that staircase, practicing with their stethoscopes, while a guest speaker from TGH comes and guides them through it. It's a dream I have. Collaboration zones scattered throughout all levels. We know that students learn from each other. So if you set up spaces where they can have peer-to-peer interactions, both within the curriculum and outside of the class time, they're going to use them. We know this from the spaces that we have available right now. This is my favorite, the outdoor terrace. So as a biology teacher, the ability to do experiential hands-on learning outside the classroom and literally just bleed into the outdoor space is fantastic. We're on the river, we can take advantage of that in many ways. Having access to that space is going to be fantastic. And I think we'll throw it back to Kevin.
So let's create the setting for all of this. Hope is not a strategy, and dreams that are reckless are called fantasies. So if you're going to dream big, make sure that it's informed. And we have had the great fortune to have parents and friends in the University of South Florida, partners that have cared a great deal about this institution to be great partners in the dream part, informing the dream part. And so it's my pleasure tonight to introduce our esteemed panelists, and first of which is John Kors. So the little bit about the panel is 3 current parents, oddly enough, 3 current parents and 1 alumni parent. John came to Tampa Prep with his daughter Izzy, and it did not take long for he and I to figure out that we like to be informed dreamers together. And John came across from the East Coast to the West Coast, and he was carrying something that I was so happy to hear, and that is the opportunity for a hospital to greatly care about a high school and say, this is the way you have access to the medical profession and the healthcare industry. And it really started there. And John, I'll never be able to thank you enough for that first set of conversations and everything that's happened since. Next is Dr. Neil Goldenberg. We stole him, thank you, Shannon Mahaffey. We stole him from another independent school over in St. Pete, and two of Neil's sons, the twins, are here. He has been a fabulous support to this school and a fabulous support to me. In the time of COVID, Neil was a bat phone for me, and I kid you not, and I can't thank you enough for that extension of your professionalism and work. But he's at Johns Hopkins All Children's, and this panel is just simply, for me, best of breed. I dare anybody to find 4 other people that are going to be able to talk about our hopes more clearly. Next is Dr. Raj Kotek. He is newer to Tampa Prep this year, and we got together, and he is so calm there. For the first thing I said to him, I met him, I said, "My gosh, you are an incredibly handsome man." And he has so much energy and passion for Advent Health, and he is another partner. And his first introduction to the school and us talking was, how do we grow kids' experience in the healthcare profession? And I'm eternally grateful for that as well. So thank you, and I'm glad that you're here tonight. And last but not least is Edmundo Robinson. We've had lunches together. We kept running into each other in all of these sort of places. And as taller men like us, we were there and we kept seeing each other in the same places. And lo and behold, I found out he had children, and I was like, I have a school. You have kids, I have a school. This is awesome. But at the end of the day, as the Chief Digital Officer up at Moffitt Cancer Center, Edmundo is making a difference in finding a cure for cancer, and I couldn't be more grateful for his work, and I couldn't be more grateful for his friendship. And so this is our panel tonight, and thank you, gentlemen, for being here and taking time out of your busy schedule to help us.
All right, so I'll open it up with the first question, because I oftentimes talk to students who are interested in health-related professions, whether it's medical explorers or biomedical sciences concentration. And I try to emphasize that there's lots of different paths to careers in healthcare. So I was wondering if you would take a minute, each of you tell us about your path and some skills that were critical along the way and how you connected to Tampa Prep. So you want to take it away, John?
Sure. Well, first, it's wonderful to be with you. Thank you, Kevin. I will tell you, you are a wonderful person and an incredible representation and representative of this school. You are probably the best headmaster I've ever worked with. And I went to a boarding school. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts. I went to a boarding school in New Hampshire through high school, and about 2 years ago, actually, probably, I was asked to be a trustee of the high school, and it's about a 200-year-old high school in New Hampshire, and I was with my headmaster that's there, and I was bragging about you.
Oh, thank you.
And then, and Joe was like, well, I got to meet this guy. And he comes down and visits in the winter, no surprise. But you are a wonderful, wonderful person, and you lead a great school that made an impact on my daughter for sure. And then Judy, I couldn't agree more with your comments about Judy. Tampa General and USF are completely integrated now, and it, quite frankly, wouldn't have happened if I didn't meet Judy when I came here 5 years ago, and we sat in her office and said, okay, we've had about 30 years of anxiety. I would describe it as, two siblings kind of fighting with each other in the same family. Let's sort all that out. And it was her leadership, her vision, along with my team that made it possible. I mean, you really have done an extraordinarily good job. We're lucky to have you in the community. You are a world-class president, world-class president. And Raj, it's funny, because when I first met you, I thought you were really good looking too. I don't know what's going on.
Wow.
It's going to be a theme. It's going to be a theme.
That was a joke, everybody.
I can't wait to come back again.
Yeah, no. Neither can I, Raj, neither can I. So my career was very simple. So I have a doctorate. I'm not an MD, but I have a PhD. And my journey was pretty simple. So I'm a graduate of Boston University. I was recruited by the Massachusetts General Hospital and Harvard Medical School to go work there for about 10 years. And that's where I really got the bug when it came to academics and healthcare. And what people don't realize, and people that are less informed, because why would you know if you don't know the area or the city or the state, they oftentimes think that like Mass General and Harvard, MGH is part of the Harvard system. There is no Harvard system. They're the medical school that sits at Mass General. And like TGH, actually, they're the oldest and largest affiliate of Harvard when it comes to the medical school. We're the oldest and largest affiliate when it comes to USF, Mersani College of Medicine. And I might add, extremely proud of that fact. But I started my career there, and I was in operations. That's where I trained for almost a decade. With physicians, physician scientists. I did all sorts of different jobs and was moved around the health system. I actually left MGH because I wanted to explore the world of healthcare, and I ended up in I ended up in Tampa one other time, and I was at the Baycare Health System for 10 years as an executive, then moved on my career over to the East Coast of Florida, to South Florida, where I ran a health system there because I wanted to really understand how to run a business from top to bottom. And I felt like I was very young, I was 40 years old at the time, and wanted the opportunity to kind of get my hands around that business. And then I came back to Tampa General, really because Tampa General is world class. So many of you that have called Tampa your home and have grown up here, we have been blessed with having an absolutely world-class academic health system. But when Tampa General and USF came together and I looked at the opportunity, our partnership is supercharging academic medicine and research for this community, for this region, and for this state, and I would suggest to you for this country. I mean, I was at J.P. Morgan Chase's healthcare conference and symposium in San Francisco representing TGH and USF and was asked to present our story. And I mean, people from around the country really wanted to understand the journey, understand the region, understand what we were creating and how we were collaborating. And so that's a little bit of kind of my journey. I will tell you this, my very first job in healthcare, and kids that don't necessarily say I want to be a doctor or a nurse, my very first job in healthcare was an orderly, working in a nursing home. And basically, I worked my way through school. I didn't have a family that could give me much. So I did it basically on my own. And what I tell my team is it's just hard work, it's determination, it's a lot of grit and focus and no excuses. You just do it, you get through it. And that's a little bit of my journey.
Thank you so much. Raj?
Oh, thank you. How do you follow up that story?
You can't, Raj, you can't.
I'll give it a try anyway. So, like John, Kevin, thank you so much for giving us and me the opportunity to be amongst this panel, speaking to this group of people here about something that's going to be really tremendous for this area. My story starts a while back, born and raised in Minneapolis. I think like many physicians or other professionals, I started early with my dream. I wanted to be a physician, same pipe dream, just want to help people, right? Well, how do you get there from a young age to where you got to be in order to execute on that dream? So I stayed in Minneapolis for college. I did all the things that college kids do, and somehow you wind your way into the opportunity to go to medical school and on to residency. I trained in Philadelphia at Lankenau Medical Center, part of the Mainline Health, as a general surgeon. And my journey to Tampa from there comes down to USF and Judy. So I came down here for a fellowship in bariatric surgery, spent a year at TGH and USF, and because my wife loved it here and we needed help with the 3 kids we had at the time, we decided to stay, and we had family in town, so we stayed, got jobs. I was blessed to be hired at Advent Health and practiced in Tarpon Springs at Advent Health North Pinellas for about 8 years or so. Really cut my teeth on a lot of different things, whether it be surgery and operating, patient care, all the way through to the leadership realm of being a physician leader, trying to find what was my passion within medicine and why did outcomes, why did quality, why did safety matter? How do I see that, and how do I help others care as much as I did and see the why behind it? Through that journey and that process, you find different people, you find different connections, you network, and I found so many different things about healthcare that drew me even deeper and further into my passion for quality and safety. And I was blessed with the opportunity then to move over to the executive side of things, and I'm now the Chief Medical Officer at Advent Health Tampa. My wife and 4 kids are here as well, and when people ask you, what do you do or who are you, the words, the story I lead with, well, I'm hopefully a great father, hopefully I'm a better husband, I don't know, maybe just great at both of those, but I'm a great and a deep family man, and I go to work every day trying to spread the love and passion that I have into what I do. The things that I feel, and I look back and I say, what got me here? It's the ability to fail and fail forward. I know it sounds very cliche, and we could talk about Kobe Bryant and Michael Jordan, all these people who took more shots that they missed than they did that they made. But you have to be able to fall down and get back up and learn from those lessons and not let them hold you back. Those are the couple of the biggest things I would say. How have I gotten to where I am? And just really having a passion every day. If I'm not finding or seeing passion, I'm doing something wrong, and I got to move on. But thankfully, I found passion for quite a long time in what I'm doing. So similarly here, I'm very passionate about this project. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So it's a tough act to follow here. As number 3, I think this is a really special group, and everybody's here because they're passionate about children's education, the future of prep students, and I definitely share that passion. So it's a privilege to be up here. I think Kevin wanted me to kind of be up here to be the counterpoint to Raj's story, which is I did all the things that you probably shouldn't do if your goal is to get into medical school. And I guess, the other thing I'd have to say is I'm definitely jealous not to be part of the man crush of Kevin Plummer or
No, you
John
are.
Forrest.
Oh, you are.
But that's okay. I'll keep working
We
on it.
didn't talk about cars. You are.
So I'll just say I wanted to emphasize a little bit kind of the high school and college years because I think that connects most with the students, and so and then I'll kind of compress the other part to keep things short. But I started off being super interested in English and in English literature in high school, but I also loved science. So I kind of kept those two things going as long as I could until I had to kind of what we would say in medicine and science terminally differentiate or super specialize and figure out what I needed to be. And so I was, head of the literary magazine in high school, but in the summers I was going to university labs and learning, how to be a bench scientist and hopefully not breaking too much glassware or messing up people's experiments too much. And then when I got to college, I went to liberal arts school and I was an English major. And in the summers, I would be at the National Institutes of Health doing internships in the laboratories, learning about cancer and immunology, and can we, develop vaccines for cancer? Of course, none of these were my ideas. I was kind of just learning these things in the laboratory. But at the same time, I was trying to figure out, how to maintain a passion for writing. And so I would, some of the summers of college, I'm from New Jersey, for better or worse, and so I would commute into Manhattan, go all the way uptown after an hour-and-a-half commute, be in the publishing district, and be an editorial intern at a journal called Genetic Engineering News, where basically I would just type a whole bunch of data or try to develop marketing materials and do things that I really had no experience doing. But eventually I realized I had to figure things out. So after doing a thesis in African American poetry of Langston Hughes in college, I then finally went in to the medical profession. So I went up to Montreal for medical school and went to University of South Florida for my internal medicine and pediatrics residency program, where I spent as much time as I could at Moffitt and at Tampa General Hospital for my adult rotations, and spent a little time at All Children's. And then I went to Colorado for my fellowship training and spent years on the faculty there, and then came back to the Tampa Bay area to join Johns Hopkins All Children's shortly after All Children's integrated with Johns Hopkins Medicine. And so I took a circuitous route, but I had really a passion for both science and for communicating science. And so research for me was a natural fit, and so research is a big part of what I do. I like building things, so I work a lot on research infrastructure development, but also really during the pandemic and prior to the pandemic was really kind of fortunate to be able to lead some national and international clinical trials for kids, and that's still an important area where now I get to do a lot of mentorship. So, in what I do today, it's all about collaboration. Science really doesn't move forward, at least for me and my colleagues, without collaboration, and that's one of the things that really resonates with me. about Tampa Prep. And I want to just echo that, one of my huge draws to contribute on a board and also to bring my students over and make that commute across the bridge quite often is this culture of innovation. And, at first I thought, well, my big draw is frankly Kevin Plummer. But actually, as I stayed here and spent more time, I really realized that probably what fuels Kevin is that innovation from students and from faculty, whereas he might have been the initial draw, he's probably now the recipient of that, and that probably is what fuels him, and I think that's what fuels a lot of us. So thanks again for having me here.
So it's hard to go last after that group, as you might imagine. So what I decided to do is take some notes, and my pen went out, so I can't write any more notes. I had to take them mentally. Thank you, Kevin. But realized that I had connections with each of the three other panelists, right? So, like John, I spent most of my time, management time, a lot of my management time in operations. So that's kind of, I grew up on the operations side. I also trained in Philly, spent some time there as well. And I was an African American literature minor who named his son Langston. Nice. I had to find those connections. I'm a third generation Southern Californian from Los Angeles, and if anyone who's actually from Los Angeles, from the Inland Empire more specifically, from the IE 909. I didn't know, I wasn't one of those folks who's like knew I was going to go to medical school like very early on. And so I still holding out hope for my kids because neither one of them wants to go to medical school, by the way. I'm like, come on, guys, one of you, please. But no, I didn't know that actually from a family of entrepreneurs on one side and a family of nurses on the other. So maybe I got it honest in some way. Went to undergrad in San Diego. Again, kind of, I was trying to be pluripotent as well, as you described, right? So I'm a neuroscience major and an African American literature minor. Trying to pull those two threads together. But ended up at medical school at UCLA, just staying in Southern California because I didn't know anything else. UCLA is not a bad school, don't get me wrong. It's a really good medical school. But I didn't know how to pull this entrepreneurial management leadership piece in. But what I had learned and what I'm looking forward here with this Build Bold is, knowing how to learn, like learning how to learn. And so what I did, and this is kind of a theme of my career, is like I started just making stuff up because I didn't know, like there was no path. So I just started making stuff up. So I'm in medical school and I'm going down the typical medical school path. And then I say, I think I want to learn business at the same time. Now, when I was in medical school, there was no combined MD, MBA programs. It wasn't a thing. So I created one. Just made it up, right? So I took a leave of absence from medical school, 2 years, right? It wasn't combined. I didn't do 1 year. I took 2 year leave of absence and I go to Wharton. So never lived on the East Coast before. Never shoveled snow. There's a reason why I'm in Tampa, by the way. And I spent 2 years there in the health management program at Penn, and go back, finish up medical school, do my residency training again in Southern California in internal medicine. But a couple things happened when I was in Philly. One, I met a lot of mentors, great people there, and again helping me think about how to learn and how to think about my career. Also met my wife, so. That was really important. South Jersey girl, actually. So we come back to Penn for my fellowship. I was a clinical scholar, RWJ clinical scholar, and I also did my research training at Penn in the medical school there at Perelman. And so now I've got medical training, research training, business training. Like, what do you do with that? What do you do with that? But again, I think what the benefit for me was that I learned how to learn and how to pull these things together. Again, I think that's a theme. That's when I saw this, that's what I thought. Like these kids are going to learn how to learn. And whether or not they go to medical school or get a PhD, they're going to learn how to learn. And that to me, I think is really, really powerful. And so I started to make things up to say, hey, how do I pull these things together? I know, I'm a health services researcher. I've got the research chops. I still take care of patients, and today I still take care of patients. But I've got this management piece. So from the very beginning, I went into operations, but my research was around what I call evidence-based management. How do you make management decisions in critical operational areas leveraging evidence, right? Just like you would if you're making clinical decisions, right? How do you make management decisions the same way? So I kind of grew up along those lines, and at some point, I developed this idea around what's the future look like? Because I was always kind of thinking about, like, what's next? What's the future? How do you pull everything together? Again, this future looking approach. I said, I actually took a sabbatical. I said, by the way, I made that up. I just made it. So I was at an institution. No one's ever taken a sabbatical at an institution before. Never happened. Literally a 100-year-old institution. No one's ever taken a sabbatical. And so I took a sabbatical. And I came back and I said, I can tell you what, I wasn't surfing in Hawaii, although that's what I wanted to do. I ended up learning from a lot of really smart people. That's what I did on my sabbatical. And I got some themes about where I thought healthcare was going. This is back 2014, 2015. And one of the themes was digital was going to be really important. The other thing was consumerism was going to be really important. Now, neither one of these things were really big themes in healthcare at the time yet. So I said, well, if that's going to be really important, that's where I want to be. I want to skate where the puck is going, right? Not where it is now. And so I started learning. I don't have a technology background. Again, I was neuroscience and literature. I didn't have a technology background, so I learned it on the fly. And became kind of pretty versed in digital, and kind of got some national recognition around really leveraging digital tools. What do I mean? Think telehealth, think mobile, think voice, think virtual reality, think artificial intelligence, machine learning. Those things. When I say digital, that's what I'm talking about. And so really started doing that and having a lot of fun. And folks in Moffitt noticed. And they said, hey, we want to build digital. You've done that before. Why don't you do that here? I said, wow, I can build digital and cure cancer at the same time? Like, how do you not do that? Right? That's awesome. Also, it's Tampa, right? And it's, I was in Delaware before. So, again, I'm from LA. So, like, well, I have a great mission. I can actually cure cancer leveraging digital tools and technology. And by the way, you can actually help cure cancer leveraging digital tools and technology. I just want to be clear about that. So I feel very strongly about that. And back to what John was saying, we're so blessed here, right? So having a world-class, kind of general, kind of medical institution in Tampa General, I agree with that. And now we compete in cancer, just to be clear, but I agree with that. But you have an absolute world-class cancer center. Like, no doubt about it. We're top 5 in volume. We 130 countries, people come to Tampa to get their cancer care. Every single state in 130 countries. And you've got it right in your backyard. Right? And so how do I not come to that? That's a draw for me. And so that was great. My kids, it took a little bit longer for them to get over with the pandemic. We were trying to transfer them over, and they were homeschooled for 2 years. Homeschooled for 2 years. Now, my wife's an angel, so I can't, she did that. I didn't do that. She homeschooled them for 2 years. And so I sit down with Kevin when I knew my kids were going to finally get in town and we're going to get them in school. I say, look, Kevin, I love my children. And if I'm going to put them in your hands, I need to look you in the eye. I need you to tell me what's going to happen when they come to Tampa Prep. And this man gave me all the confidence in the world that my son was absolutely going to be in the right place by coming here to Tampa Prep. I only needed that one conversation. That's all I needed. And I have all the confidence in the world that he's getting everything, and it's played out 100%. So very happy to be here. Very happy that we're expanding and growing in this way. Obviously, it's a passion for me in terms of STEM, so just excited to be here, and thank you for having me.
Thank you. That was at Eulalie that we had that lunch.
That was at Eulalie.
The eyeballing was in public, so no one was harmed. It was really great. Thank you for sharing your backgrounds. And I think one of the important things is what I feel like distinguishes our school in many, many places is that we take the time to have the smart conversations with smart people to inform direction. And I think you're getting a sense of what that is right now, because this is who we're talking to. With that being said, I would love to get some of your quick comments about skills and values, things that you hope that we are doing here and infuse in this building, and skills and values and intentionality into our students so that they have opportunities, 1, in healthcare, 2, in STEM fields, but 3, your paths are all so different and divergent, the skills and values that hopefully will lead to them being successful, happy human beings.
Okay. So skills and values, that's a tough question. But let me, can I do something a little bit differently? I'll get there and I'll be succinct. Let me tell you why we're and why I'm, well, you kind of understand why I'm passionate about Tampa Prep and everything that you've done. But here's the uniqueness about the building that you're going to create, because that's what we're here to talk about tonight. And I want to give you just a minute or two of context, just to contextualize the comment. So I came from Boston, where I spent my formative years learning in some really great institutions academically. And one thing that Boston's known for a lot, and whether you believe this or not, Boston is considered the Silicon Valley of biotech. You want to be a major player in biotech, Boston, Massachusetts is where you go. Now, there are other places in the country that do wonderful work, but there's a real concentration of that activity in Boston. Why is that? Well, it's for 2 or 3 reasons, and this gets directly to this building and why I think it's so serious. It's more than just getting a building to have great space to collaborate in and to partner with and to create teams. It's key to our economic survival and our ability to continue to thrive, because you're an important piece of the ecosystem. There's 3 reasons. One is the university system. There's a ton of intellectual capital in places like Boston. Boston's not the only place, but there's a ton of intellectual capital. That's why big businesses, a friend of mine who ran GE Healthcare before it broke up into the 3 businesses, said we're moving from Connecticut to Boston for one reason. It's to access the university systems. And we're moving to one of the most expensive states, moving from Connecticut's expensive, Massachusetts is even more expensive, and we're moving to one of the most expensive cities in the world to access intellectual capital. It's number 1. Number 2, the health systems. The health systems in Boston compete, but they also know how to collaborate. They know how to transcend competition. So I have a ton of respect for Moffitt. I don't see us as competitors. I see us more as collaborators. I don't. We have to figure out ways to transcend competition and collaborate and innovate together. Supporting programs like this kind of make that happen. It's a piece of the puzzle. In Boston, we used to compete all the time with Beth Israel Deaconess, with Dana-Farber, before it was part of the Mass General Brigham system. We used to compete all the time. But when it came to research, when it came to STEM work, when it came to education, we transcended that. We have to learn how to do that in this community. We haven't quite figured that out yet. We're getting closer, but we haven't quite figured it out yet. Programs and environments like this, even at high schools, very important. Very, very, very important. So that's the second reason Boston is the place to go globally right now for biotech. Education, the health systems, and the school systems, the public and private middle schools and high schools are another reason why a place like Boston flourishes. It does. So when Kevin and I talked about the building, I said, you know, Kevin, let me tell you something we're working on in the city. We're building with USF the Tampa Medical and Research District. Okay, we already have assets. We've got an academic medical center that's on 30 acres, 3.3 million square feet and growing. because of the relationship Judy and I forged, and really, quite frankly, her leadership, along with lots of other people at USF, but every team has a leader, we were able to come together, transcend our differences, quite frankly, and build something unique for the community, for the region, for the state, and quite frankly, a model for the country. And I said, Kevin, we're building a medical district akin to the Longwood Medical District in Boston. We are going to attract biotech. We are going to attract clinical research, basic scientists, physician scientists, private equity, venture capital, and we are going to build an ecosystem inside the city. Made possible not just USF, but you have USF as a catalyst, TGH as a catalyst, the University of Tampa as a catalyst, and our private and public high schools and middle schools are incredibly important. Not to mention the museums we have in this city, the cultural attractions we have in the city. We're bringing it together and tying all of the pieces to give the city of Tampa an identity around medical care and research. So this is where Tampa Prep comes in. You're important. You're important for the obvious reasons that we've already talked about. As I talked to the superintendent of schools in Hillsborough, I said, you got to partner with your private schools, just like your private schools have to partner with your public schools, because we can learn from each other. Businesses and organizations like me, we have to be catalysts. We have to support the ecosystem, grow the ecosystem, build the ecosystem, and thrive. That's what we're doing inside the city of Tampa and the Tampa Bay region and across, quite frankly, the whole state of Florida. Tampa General is not just in Tampa, but I've got 300 or 400 people on the East Coast in 11 clinics. We have the Tampa General Hospital flag with the USF Health flag flying over 11 clinics, 400 employees in Palm Beach County, and growing. We're in Orlando, we're in Fort Myers, but this is what this kind of activity can build and kind of help push forward, right? Intellectual capital. What are my values? What would I tell you? 4 things to do this. 1, we want people to learn how to lead and treat each other authentically. We want people to be genuine. We want people to present themselves as who they are. Number 2, and this is what you can teach your kids. Number 2, we want transparency when it comes to this kind of work. Complete transparency. If you tell your story and your story is factual, you got nothing to worry about. Be transparent. It's transformative when you're completely transparent. Number 3, lead and treat each other with kindness. And I might dare to say love. That's what Tampa Prep does, better than any school I've ever seen. And I sit on my own boarding school board, and I use you as an example, which I think drives my guy crazy, but it's okay. That's how you learn and grow. And then finally, the last value that I would like to see represented in a building like this and in a school like this and the work we're doing is leading and treating each other with vulnerability. Admitting when you're wrong, sharing your frailties, your idiosyncrasies, exploring, collaborating, and gaining a better understanding of who we are and gaining an appreciation of who we are, and then coming together and building something unique and different that is bigger than ourselves and supports the community in a sustainable, reproducible way. That's the journey we're on at TGH and at USF, and to partner with a school like Tampa Prep only makes sense. Only makes sense, because part of my job is to make sure that TGH and USF are set up for the next 50 to 100 years. We need to leave our egos at the door, and we need to focus on what matters most. And what matters most is this community in this region. Projects like this do exactly what I am saying, in my opinion. So that's my perspective on the importance and relevance of the work we have in front of us. So hopefully that helps.
It does help. Everybody if you've met with me on this project, heard me speak about this project, it's remarkable to have this opportunity in 2023, but I've always considered this to be a 2050, 2060 building for the institution. That level of intentionality, that level of flexibility, that level of opportunity for kids to build on what was given to us, which is really, really important. Other thoughts about skills, values, getting into medical careers, and thinking about that as an opportunity for kids with the intentionality of this facility.
Just amplify a few things. I think that was a great, discussion of the key values. I just want to hit a couple skills, and I think what really resonates with me is an emphasis on critical and analytical thinking. Focusing on why things are the way they are, I think, is really critical. I look back to various stages of education, and I probably remember very few of the facts. But I think what helped me most is learning how to think, how to learn, how to inquire, kind of the spirit of inquiry, testing hypotheses, et cetera. It's not just STEM, it's not just STEAM, it's in every area, having a discipline to how you learn. And so that focus on also how do we know what we know, I think is really important today, kind of having a culture where kids understand that they need to do primary source verification of the knowledge that they have. That's probably the greatest cure for misinformation. And how often do we primary source our data or what we assume we know? So it's really learning how to learn that I think is a really critical skill. And then I think that fosters a passion for continuous learning throughout life, which I think probably all of us in this room kind of share a passion for that and aspire to see that in our kids if they're going to be prepared to solve the problems that we're not even anticipating and the challenges that we're not even anticipating today. So those are some of the key skills that I think are super important. And the last one is collaboration. I think it's so important that the physical environment is conducive to collaboration, to kind of synergize with what you are cultivating in kids and in faculty around collaboration. You have to have the right environment to fit with that ethos. And I think that's, essentially, the facility needs to be as unlimited in potential as these students are. And I think that's what we think of and hope for our children. And so the facility ought to be just as limitless as they are.
Neil, early in this process around design that we were doing the work on, Neil galvanized his team at Johns Hopkins All Children, and they were kind enough, this is in the middle of COVID, to do a Zoom call and actually allow us to explore that facility and the thinking that they had behind research and collaboration. And there are big ingredients from that visitation sprinkled inside of the design of this building.
Let me double down on one thing that Neil said, because I think it's so important. So he mentioned the critical thinking component, right? And a primary primary source verification, just knowing how to learn, which is something I had said before. But the reason why I want to double down on this because what's happening is the tools that we use change. So the critical thinking becomes more and more important. So I'll give you an example. I won't talk about ChatGPT just yet, although I may come back to that. But I was sitting down. This is actually several years ago. I'm sitting down with my team. So I typically when I'm on service, I'm on the teaching service, and I have USF residents. And one of them was someone who's kind of a transition year, which they were internal medicine, but they're going to go into radiology. So they're going to go into radiology, right? So these are docs who sit around looking at films of people, CT scans, X-rays, these kind of things, right? And I said, one of the things that we work on is artificial intelligence. And I'm pretty sure, again, this is several years ago, I'm pretty sure that at some point the AI is going to be able to better diagnose than you will as a human being. Not there yet, but it will. What do you think that means for your job?
Oh, geez.
Yeah. right? Again, they're just in training. They hadn't even started yet. They're still in training. And of course, it'll never get there. I'll be fine. I'll probably be 20 years out of my career before. We're actually closer now. And so, but here's the thing. What I wanted them to understand is that there's still a really important role of the physician, especially the physician scientist, in radiology. Why? Because who's going to use the tool? Who's going to train the tool? Who's going to check to make sure the tool is actually doesn't have any bias? Who's going to develop all the workflows to make sure that the tool actually is appropriately being used? If it's a predictive algorithm, who's going to make sure and check that output that's coming from that tool? If you don't know how to think and don't know how to use these new tools that are emerging, the tools are going to take over. Right? And so that's one of the things that with ChatGPT, again, I told you I'm going to come back to it. Right, if you think about it, you could just like throw a question out there and just take the output and just say, hey, that's what I'm going to do. Or you can look and say, well, that doesn't make any sense. Why don't I ask it the right question that actually allows me to further whatever it is I'm trying to explore? I'll give a different example. So again, I'm a health services researcher, and I might be writing a paper on some complex topic, like what's the readmission rates for patients with heart failure who haven't taken all of their furosemide or something. It's a water pill, and you can actually start. I do. You can start some of your research on Google. I can start my research on Google. I can start my research on Wikipedia. But I don't cite them in my paper, by the way. Let's be clear about that. The point is, I know how to go and do primary source verification. So if Google says, hey, this is the right thing, I go to that thing, and then I go to those references, then I go to that reference, and I go through until I say, wait a minute, I don't believe that reference. It's not peer reviewed, it comes from some journal I've never heard of, not a good reference, don't believe it, right? You have to have that critical thinking. That's what I'm looking for with this. And it doesn't actually matter, again, what ultimate field these kids go into. That ability to critically think and break things down, to understand how to use tools and how to really understand the underlying evidence and science behind whatever it is they're exploring, that is a lifelong skill.
I'm going to just blow your mind for a second. I'm going to throw out a concept. I think everybody in the room is familiar with the Jetsons, right? How much of that cartoon is currently happening right now?
Yeah, some of it.
Gene Roddenberry in Star Wars. And if you're a fan of the Terminator, AI becomes self-aware in 2025. That's Judgment Day. So this notion of the interplay between science, technology, science fiction, we've had a lot of things informed by really creative parts of our world, and a lot of them are coming to pass. And so having this panel here. Okay, the time is getting away from us, so Amanda, you get the next question, and then we want to preserve some time for a couple of special things, some Q&A, and then a quick conversation from a special guest. That's the way I'm going to put it. So Amanda, next one.
So I guess one of the things that I really enjoyed this year was the first time in a long time at the beginning of the school year, we'd have students come back from the summer and they could share with us what they did over the summer. Not their travels, but the internships, the volunteer opportunities, those connections they made in the community. So I was wondering if anyone would be willing to share what should our students be doing, what connections and opportunities are out there in the healthcare field or research.
Raj, you got this. You got this one.
I think that's a great question, because part of becoming a solid human being, I think, is volunteerism, is giving back. How do you do that? The intersection of STEM or healthcare, there is just so much, and I know that all four of us have so many different initiatives or projects, possibilities in the institutions or the healthcare systems that we're with. You know, the simplest thing is coming into a hospital, and I want to get out. Everybody, I'm sure, knows this and realizes, but healthcare, it's not doctors and nurses. Those are just the front-facing parts of healthcare. If you have one doctor, you've got multiple times that number of people supporting them up and down the chain. And we're talking about food nutrition service people, engineers, architects, attorneys, HR specialists. I mean, you name it. A hospital or a healthcare system is no different than a small city with hospitality, right? So any one of those areas are areas where students can come in and shadow, do internship, externship. And there's just such a tremendous amount of different things that students can do to get exposed. Data analysts. I mean, we're talking about machine learning, AI. That has to be supported by people who source verify, critically think, understand data, and how to apply it to. More than that, how to explain it to other people. So these are all things and life experiences you gain in the field by seeing, doing, and experiencing. There's really just an endless amount, I think, of social, like public service and volunteerism that can come through this sort of an intersection between STEM and understanding how that applies to healthcare.
But I couldn't, that's really well said, just because I've had this lived experience just recently. So I have a niece, she's a junior, she's at a school in Concord, Massachusetts called Middlesex, and she said, Uncle John, I want to go and do science. She's in STEM at Middlesex. She's going to be some sort of a scientist. She's a very smart young woman. She said, well, what do I do? And I said, well, sit with your parents, my sister. I'll help. Get that headmaster on board or the guidance counselor, and let's have a conversation about what you want, like what's part of your journey. Because you got to start. It's really great to hear our stories, and we've all come at it differently. But the truth is, it's so competitive now. You got to start identifying where you are and where you want to go and what you want to do. I mean, it's just a very competitive environment. So she ended up, long story short, she ended up applying to an internship, non-paid, at Mass General Brigham in a lab. She had absolutely the best summer of her life because she sat with a researcher, an MD, PhD, specifically at Mass General, but it was an MGH Brigham kind of thing, and had an incredible time, incredible. So now she's applied to her schools, her acceptances are coming in, she's trying to figure out where to go. Her internship was critically important to that journey. So it was extremely important that the parents, maybe an aunt or uncle, somebody she trusts, the school, sit with her and say, what do you want? Where do you want to go? You know you want science and technology. Let us help you get there. Because the schools that she's applying to, at least the undergraduate schools, are highly competitive. And if I just think the days, this is one perspective, the days of sort of like, hey, I'm going to do whatever I'm going to do, I don't see it. I don't. Not in the STEM space, and not if you want to go to some of the more competitive universities in the country. So you got to get on it. Whether I think when you're a freshman, I think it's like the year is you're figuring it all out. But come sophomore, junior year, those 2 years in particular, the experience that I've seen through the eyes of my nieces, nephews, and kids, you've got to get on it. And you've got to leverage the school to help with that journey. So that's just something to think about.
That's kind of my lived experience too, because I have a senior in high school right now. Neil, I think you have something to add.
Yeah, I just wanted to highlight one of the Tampa Prep student experiences, and it really goes back to what John said about creating an ecosystem, and I think, that ecosystem is pretty broad, so I'll give a St. Pete example. But also to John's point, myself, even though it was many years ago, a little older than I look. The time I spent bouncing around with English and literature, I was in NIH labs and university labs as well, so I still knew I had to start that track record. But to give back, one of the things that we did at Johns Hopkins All Children's is, we really wanted to be able to provide a summer internship experience in clinical and translational research at the high school level, college level, and at the med school level. And most of our students who apply every summer, and we write to every headmaster and every principal in the Tampa Bay region, to invite applicants from the science departments for those students. Most of them are actually high school students. And this year we had one prep student out of about 10 students from mainly regionally, but a few from a national draw. And that student was able to learn how you do clinical research, learned all of the regulations that allow you to be approved as a study team member through the Institutional Review Board, learned about how to build the database and capture data appropriately, and was able to contribute to a project over the course of the summer where he was then able to present in front of a poster at our annual research symposium with all faculty around him, and also then presented at the Florida chapter of the Society for Critical Care Medicine with a poster, and now is a co-author on a manuscript of original research that has been submitted for peer review publication. And this is now a high school senior. So I wish I had that kind of great opportunity. He had a wonderful mentor who was not me, and this is not my child. This is a different child. I just think those are the kinds of things that we as community partners for Tampa Prep should be doing for students at Prep and elsewhere, and to then bring them back to a school, for example, for their senior year, where they have this kind of facility for this kind of continuation of that experiential learning is really what we need to do. So I think as we evolve together, that's what's going to be best for the students.
Awesome. We had some additional questions, but I want to be cognizant of the hour and your time, and wanted to open it up right now to see if there are any questions from those of you that took time out of your busy schedules. You don't get this opportunity very often. So an opportunity to see if there's any questions from you. With that, I'm going to take a moment to turn this evening over to the chair of our Building Bold campaign, Miss Shannon Mahaffey.
All right, I'm not as tall as the guy with the same haircut. Can you do that for me? Thank you very much. All right, first of all, thank you very, very, very much for being here tonight, sharing your stories and your pathways, I can't even speak, your different routes to get to where you are, because you show that those kids that you're talking about that might not know what their path is right now are going to get there. They're going to get somewhere that's going to make themselves proud and their families proud. We're standing here tonight in the Smith Black Box Theater, and I can't help but continually go back to Kathy and Bob Smith, who are former parents as well as a trustee, and they believed in Tampa Prep when their children were here, and they helped make this black box possible. And this is where you usually come and sit and watch performances. You watch children in the front of the stage shine like you've never seen before. You see children in the back running around in the dark shadows, making things happen. You might see some on the catwalks. And those kids are all here because somebody believed in Tampa Prep. They knew that there was something else that some other kid might need. And they put that into action with their belief in that project. And so what we're doing with Building Bold is bringing so much of that together. It's not just science. It's not just technology. There's a great quote by someone, Alex Monroe, who said back in 1901, art is the shortest path between one man to another across nations. If you think about that, then flash forward to 2020, and an artist, a digital artist, used that same quote to inspire a piece of art where he used Zoom backgrounds and faces of people in 49 countries for art. That is what we now consider art. That's not what in 1901 I think that the gentleman was speaking of. But that's what we talk about now. And that was something that was not foreseen at the time, but it will be. And so what we're doing here at Tampa Prep is making those things happen for the children that come after ours, like Kathy and Bob did, and those that are here now that will realize the wonderful facility that will meet their potential. They have the potential. They have the ability. My husband and I have a senior here, and she's been here since 7th grade. And yes, Kevin was one of the things that kind of made us say, we can't really say no to this place. But she has become the amazing individual she is as a 17-year-old because of Tampa Prep. Through a really tough time with COVID, but through great faculty and staff. And she is going to go on to college to a place that she chose, that she's going to thrive in. And that is something that we can't ever say thank you enough, but we did decide to give the largest philanthropic gift that we've ever given to Tampa Prep because of what Tampa Prep has done for us. So with that, I just would like to ask you guys to, if you have not already, please consider Building Bold with us. It's going to make a difference to somebody's child, yours, or somebody down the road. So please consider, and for those who already have, thank you. And thank you, Judy, for your lead gift, and Steve. I know he couldn't be here this evening, but we appreciate it greatly. Thank you.
So we have to bring this evening to a close, and I really do want to say thank you for your time again, but I want to really say thank you to 4 friends that answered a call and came and shared their wisdom and have shared their wisdom throughout this entire project. And Raj, it has been super cool. We're going places. Neil, my guy, midnight guy in a big way. Edmundo, we've got work to do not only here, but up at Moffett together as well. And John, I'll never be able to thank you for your instantaneous graciousness and being a community leader that has said, this can happen between schools and healthcare. And that role modeling for so many of your peers in our region has been critical to the success for so many kids and opened doors for kids to professions and opportunities that they never could have imagined. The healthcare field is incredibly large. That's what I've learned from my friends. There are doctors, there are nurses, there are radiologists, but there are also hospital administrators. And I do want to share one quick story before we close. John opened up TGH to us in our Medical Explorers program. There was a young lady that was in that program, and she happened to be able to get into the helicopter. And the pilots were there. It happened to be 2 female pilots on that day. And we lost her in our tour because she stayed at the helipad and talked to these 2 lady doctor pilots. And they stitched together the path that she is following today. That young lady graduated from Tampa Prep. She went to West Point. She has learned how to fly helicopters. She has to do 2 more years of service, and she is on her way to med school because of that day. That's what we're trying to do. With that, I want to say thank you to everyone tonight for taking time out of your busy lives and joining us. I don't know if the panelists have any place to go. We might have taped them to their seats, so in case you're too shy to ask a question, to catch them. But thank you very much for taking time out of your night. Please enjoy one more cocktail and enjoy each other's company. And thanks for coming out tonight.